Hello and welcome to this next tutorial. In this tutorial I have a specific model and I want to make a material for it, and we're going to do that in Substance Designer and then transfer it over to Substance Painter. So sometimes making textures in the abstract could be a little bit difficult. It can look good, but sometimes the scale's not right and so on and so forth. So I just want to go through that process. So in Substance Designer, I'm going to create a new metallic roughness substance graph, and I'll call this Tower Stone. And I'm going to make it 4096 by 4096 because I can always res down. And there we go. So we've got all our outputs over here, but what I don't have is my model down here. So let's get that into this preview. So in the unsaved package we can link a 3D mesh, and it so happens that I've exported this as an FBX. So if I click on the FBX and open, now it's saying it's unwrapped on multiple tiles, which it is. Do I want to use the UDIM mesh? Yes, I do. It won't ask you that if that's not true. So now under the unsaved package we have our graph and we have our resources. So I can grab this now and drag and drop it into the preview view, and it will bring it in for me. So now I can easily create my material and get it to scale so that I'm happy with it. One thing under this, all of the other kind of the primitives you get, you'll just see a default under the materials, but this has got each of my materials in. So when I create up here, I'm just going to need to apply them down here to make them show up. Okay, so that's the initial setup. In the next one we'll start to build the pattern for our stone. So I'll talk to you then. So as an initial phase we're going to build a pattern, and we're going to start off with a noise, oddly, because normally I'd start off with a shape. So if I press space and type in cells, I want cells 4. Now cells 4 gives us this kind of irregular pattern. Everything's looping over itself, and that's great. That could be rough interlocking brick shapes, but we need to do some things to make it more brick shapey. So I'm just going to zoom in, and then to this node, if I grab this output and drag a noodle out and let go, we're going to put an edge detect on it, and what that does is detects the edges around each of the shapes in here. So it detects a shape and then puts a border around it, but it comes in like this normally because of its initial parameters, and for those we've got edge width and roundness. If I take the width down to 0, you'll see more come in, and if I take the roundness down to 0, you'll see they all come in, and then we can adjust to get a nice kind of interlocking pattern. I'm putting a little roundness on it, not an awful lot in this case, but just enough to make it nice. I'm going to put a little bit of more space in there because I want plenty of space to be able to show the mortar. Okay, so let's pop over to the other side, and right over here I'm going to press space and pop in a blend, and I'll plug that in. And I'm not going to do anything with this blend just yet. Oops, they're a bit far away, aren't they? I'm just going to plug it into a few outputs. So I'm going to plug it into the color output and then delete this standard grey. We'll plug it into the normal to convert it from a height map to a normal map, and that's what we get. Lovely. And we'll pop it into the height channel and delete that out. There we go. So one other one that you can consider using, and it helps in visualization, especially when you're using when you've got really complicated textures and with a lot of height and such like, is the ambient occlusion node. So this is a plain colour, but if I delete it out and press space and ambient and pick ambient occlusion and plug that in, I can then pop that down there and it plugs it in, and it gives me an ambient occlusion map, you know, judging by the fact that this is a height map. So I can adjust this a little bit, so I can take my height depth down and it will adjust accordingly, and we can also adjust a bit of the radius to you know, fine tune. But I'm going to leave it like that for the moment because we need to show these in the 3D view. So I can drag, whoops, oh dear, I've messed up my interface. Let me drag that back into the corner. Whoops, there we go. Oh no, that's not the corner I expected it to be. I'm terrible with this interface. Come on, you'll go on one side or the other. There we go. So if I right click and drag this onto the graph, I need to tell it that this is for tower stone and its base colour, and now it will show up. And we can also do that for the other channels. So I can grab my normal, right click, drag and drop it, tower stone, normal, ambient occlusion, right click, tower stone, ambient occlusion, it's at the top, and then we'll pop our height in. So tower stone, height, wherever height's gone, there it is. Now your height might go a bit nuts initially, and that's possibly because of my settings and the amount of geometry I've got in this model. So for that we just need to go to materials, tower stone, edit, and then under height scale we'll bring that right down. I usually find 0.01 is good enough, and I can increase the tessellation factor to get a little more definition out of it. So let's just up it a lot and then up our tessellation factor, and then down the scale again, 0.0, whoops, 5 I think maybe. So that's quite rough, but not an awful lot I can do about that just now. But what we'll do in the next section is we'll start to build this up and, you know, turn it into a bit more of a complicated pattern. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so the scale I think is okay on this, but if you do want to adjust it, we just need to go to our cells texture over here and adjust our scale. So if I take it up, it will reduce the size, and if I take it down, it will increase the size. So depending upon, you know, the size of blocks that you want, just adjust it until it's, you know, pretty much where you want it. And I think that's about okay for me. But the point of bringing my model in is that this is the right scale for this model. You know, if I was just working on a cube, it would be somewhat abstract and I wouldn't really, you know, be sure. But because the model's here, I can see it and I know that that's about, you know, the size I was envisaging. There we go. Another point in here, the displacement I've got on this, or the height map, is splitting the seams, but I'm not too worried about that because that's not going to happen when I you know, do it properly. Fingers crossed anyway. Okay, so to make a better shape then, so if I just click on this noodle here, I want to put it through a blur, and because I'm not particularly worried about the overhead, I'm going to use a blur HQ. So let's pop that in there and just shift, drag that over to there to reconnect it, and you'll see that that pretty much blurs it out of all proportion because the intensity is way too high. So I'm just going to bring that intensity down until I'm just softening my blocks. I don't want them to be you know, just like rigid things. I want there to be some kind of shape so that they're, you know, a bit more natural. There we go. That already looks better. There's less jaggedness, and yeah, it's all good. Okay, so on top of that, I do want to add some surface to the stone, so that it's, you know, not flat. At the moment I've got some great white pieces which are just completely flat, and what I want to do is sort of have some coming in, some angles, and so on and so forth. So for that we can use a cell texture again. So I need it to be bigger than this, but I'm just going to copy this one with Shift Control and D, and then I'll bring it down here, and then I'll right click, add node and a blend, and I want that one into there and that one into there. So my scale needs to be far higher because I want it to be kind of very small amounts of noise, perhaps not that high. We'll perhaps take it down even more. There we go. And now I need to control my blend, and I can do that by either using this original edge detect or this blur as a mask. So let's use the blur as a mask, and if I zoom in there or double click, you can see in here it's coming in the cracks at the moment, and that just means that I've got these noodles the wrong way around. So if I select both these noodles with the drag box and press the X key, it will flip them, and now I've got a nice you know, variegated pattern. But it's too strong, you know, the because this is full of blacks and greys and such like, they're either going to displace really far in or going to come really far out and not really help me. So I need to adjust them down so that they are close to white but not quite. So let me just move this back a little bit, select this noodle, and I'll pick a curves node. Oops, it's not curves node, it's a curve node. And now we can use this curve node to drive that. So if I click in here, click on there, double click, I can take that right up and take the white down a little bit. So any completely white values are going to be grey because I've put this point here. And if I pop this one a little bit lower, I'm really changing the range of the colours I'm getting out. So I just need to grab this bottom one, and now I've really kind of flattened them out. So instead of getting sort of really harsh blacks and really strong whites, I'm getting a blend of the two. Or rather I'm getting most of it at the high end towards white. So let's plug that one in. So I'll press shift and drag that noodle over, and that's what it looks like. So they're a little bit rough, of course they are, so I'll just move those back, and this time I'll just use the standard blur and then take that value down. Come on. Crikey, it's really low. There, something like that. And now I've got some, you know, real kind of surface differences in there. So the rocks aren't just flat, they've got a surface texture to them. We probably see that best if I go and have a look at the normal map. So you can see the normal map here. This is a DirectX normal map. If you're used to OpenGLs, they're kind of flipped. I'm used to OpenGL, so it looks backwards to me. You know, if you're used to OpenGL, imagine it backwards and you'll be fine. So we've got these interspersing kind of patterns on the brick, which is going to carve it out, you know. So that's that bit. We might refine that even more in the next one to get ourselves to, you know, have a little bit of extra detail. So I will talk to you then. Next then, we're going to add in some finer detail to the surface of this stone. So for that, we're going to use a new shape or a new noise. I'm going to press space and type in Gaussian, and we'll pick Gaussian spots. Now these come in fairly big, so I want to reduce those, so I need to increase my scale. To go quite a long way up, we might adjust that in a moment. Now again, as we did earlier, we're going to use an edge detect to limit the coverage here. So if I press Shift Control D to copy without links, I'll pop that one down there and pop that one into that one. And that's what we got, and now I just need to adjust my values until I get something. So there we go. Can round them off a bit. I can't round them off, they're too small, so it's just adjusting the edge width until I get a nice pattern. So that's what I'm looking for, sort of random kind of blobby bits which aren't particularly, you know, recognizable, that, you know, they're not uniform, but the problem is everything is black and everything is white, so you know that doesn't help me really. I want them to be of different levels. So what we're going to do here is add in a flood fill. Now the flood fill is an interesting node because it will take whatever's inputted into it, detect the shapes, and then flood it with a colour, or rather a colour gradient, which looks remarkably to me like world space normal maps, but now directly it's of no use to us at all. Unless you're looking for that kind of effect, which you might, but in this case what we want to do is plug it through a flood fill processor. So if I type click space and type flood again, I get all of these options, and we've got flood fill to grayscale, we've got flood fill to index, mappers, all sorts of things, but the one I'm looking for is this random grayscale. And when I plug that in, you'll see now I've got a range of, you know, greys to whites, and you know it's a bit more variegated. Excuse me. But I don't want it to be pure white. I need it to, you know, be a little bit down from that. So what I'm going to do is then drag this noodle out and type in curve. There we go. And then I just need to bring this one down a bit. There we go, somewhere along those lines I think. So I don't want the whitest in here to be pure white, because yeah, that doesn't really help me. So from that then, sorry, I've got my little practice blend in there, which I didn't mean to put in. Let's take that out. Okay, so if I press space and type in blend, I can then take this input to, whoops, that needs not to be in that one, it needs to be in the other one. We just select and delete that one. Into the middle. I'll take this one as the mask, and I'll take this one and pop it in top. And as you can see on this particular view, that's not really helping us, because the type in the blend is a copy, and I need that to be something else. So if I put it to subtract, you'll see that the little areas are now digging in, but perhaps they're digging in too far. So if I take the opacity down a little bit, that should soften that up quite nicely. There we go. Now if they're too sharp for you, you're not, you know, happy about the fact that, you know, they're very sharp edges, you could put a blur in here somewhere, probably a high quality one because it's very small, and that would do you the job, but I'm happy with it. So I'm going to plug that in, and now you can see I've got little patches, little bits which are digging into our stone and, you know, giving me a more kind of variated effect. And if it's not enough, I could always go back here and perhaps change the scale down a bit, and you'll get a different result. And we could also go to the edge detect and increase our edge width to, you know, control it even further. There we go. Okay, so that's adding in a bit of surface detail, and of course, you know, you can do that down to the nth degree. You know, you can go really fine if you really wanted to, but in terms of demonstration, I'm, you know, not going to go that far. You'll just end up with a kind of loads and loads of blends down here. But before we stop, I'm just going to select all this and then right click, and we'll add a frame, and this is our base shape. And now I know what that is. You know, in a few months time when I come back to this graph and try and amend it, I'll at least have an idea that that's what's driving our basic shape. Okay, so next we're going to come in and have a look at colour. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so this next step with colour can be a bit tricky. Well, I find it tricky. I imagine some other people will, and some people will find it easy. But sometimes it's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes you have to sort of do it several times. You know, you don't have to be perfect first time. You know, just in case, you know, you do this and think, well, why doesn't it work first time for me? Well, largely speaking, it's because I've done it 3 or 4 times and then found the right formula. So yeah. So let's add a blend node in. Sorry, not a blend, a gradient. So space and gradient, and then I'm going to plug my map into that, and then we'll take this one and plug it directly into the colour. Okay, so this gradient node allows us to map colours onto a black and white picture. So if I double click on that one just to make sure that's what we're getting in the preview. So I can map something to black, I can map something to white, and I can map everything in between. So if I click on the gradient editor, it will show me what I've got. And in this instance, because I want something relatively realistic looking, if not stylized, I've got this reference here of the sort of colours I might expect in a brick wall. So there's all sorts of different ones, and I picked this one because I might change my mind and go, you know, sandy, or I might change my mind and go to a more bluestone. But the handy thing here is we have a pick gradient. So if I click pick gradient, and what I want to do is find a nice little area where I can slide from light to dark or from dark to light, and I quite like this one, so I'm going to click there and just draw a straight line up. And what that will do is sample all those colours. Whoops, I need to minimise that. Just click, there we go. It will sample all the colours in that image and map them to my blacks and my whites and greys. But I generally find you get too much precision out of it initially, and I try and reorganise them. So I'm trying to get all my lights down one end and all my darks down the other end in some sort of semblance of organisation. I think that one probably comes before there. There's probably a better way to do this, and you know, I fully accept that, you know, I'm not the be all and end all of knowledge on this particular step, but this is what I do. This is what I personally use. Okay, so once we've sort of organised those a little bit, and I think it's just this one needs to come out now, not there. I think it might need to come in there somewhere. Yes, something like that. yeah, we can see what effect that's had on our texture. And as you can see, I've got quite a light areas, and I've got this purple on the inside. Now don't worry about this purple on the inside, I'm going to overwrite it at some point in time. I'm just trying to get the brick right with the the stone. So in this case I want everything to darken up, so what I can do is select all of my keys up here, and down here we have a variance or variation, and I can take that up and down to get stronger or weaker colours. Similarly with saturation, I could take the saturation out and go back to other values. I've taken it completely the wrong way now, and now I'm into yellow, but you can up and down these to get different values. The other option is I could just grab some of these keys. I need to select one to do that and take them out. So these two I think are probably a little bit redundant, so if you select them, left click and drag them upwards, they will go, and then I can start to move these dark ones down to attempt to get that into some sort of order. I think some of these are probably a little bit redundant as well. I could select and press delete as well as move it, so I'm going to move these downwards and this one downwards, and this reddish one I'm going to keep because it's a bit of variation, and then I'm going to slip these ones right down, and at some point in time I should start to get the kind of effect I want. But as it stands, the actual colours I want are down here in the mortar, which is not where I want them. So what I can actually do now is flip this by inverting the positions, and now I've got a nice kind of bluestone rocky kind of look. The mortar is irrelevant at this point in time because we're going to do another gradient for that. So adjust that. I'm going to add, we're going to take some of these up a little further to get more of these colours in at the sort of top range to get a bit more variation. And if you want to add a key in, just click and it will add a key. So I could add a key there, for example, and then drag the colour down, and that area will be darker. Okay, so that's plugged in, and that's what it looks like, which it shouldn't. Why does it look like that? Is that because my base colour is not showing up on here? No, it's most likely because my ambient occlusion is really overwhelming it. So I'm going to take my radius and depth down, and now I can just see the effect of the colour. So now I can kind of start to adjust this height until it comes in much more subtly. Might have to go, oh, it's because my radius is 0 as well. There we go. Let's take that back down until it starts to be a little bit more subtle. I don't want the mortar to be completely black because I'm going to try and put a texture in that in a moment, and if it's black I'm not going to notice, just like I didn't notice just then. Okay, so there we go. I don't think that looks too bad, a bit stylized, but again, this is the base. We're going to add to it. I only want to create the basic shapes and the basic colour, and then in Substance Painter I'll use other things to enhance it. Okay, right, what's next then? So next we'll add another colour node, and we'll add that in for the mortar. So I'll talk to Okay, so let's duplicate this node. So I'll select it and Control and D, and that will preserve its input. And then we're going to clear the gradient, So let's we don't need to clear it, we can just pick a new one. So let me move it over that side. I'm going to bring up my pure ref, and now I'm interested in the mortar, and we'll do the same thing. We'll pick a gradient, and I want to go from dark to light, so I'm just trying to find a little spot in here I think. There we go. I've got a few different values there. If you're not picking up enough, you might want to increase your precision, and then you'll get more. The only issue I find with that is you end up with too many points, and rearranging them and doing all that stuff is a bit of a pain. But that's not a good gradient. I needed some darker values, so let's try that. Let's draw the curve line there. Now I've got some dark versions, I've got some lighter versions, and I think that will do the job. So let's double click there, and if I applied that now, that's what it would look like. If I invert my positions, that's what it would look like. So yeah, I'm going to do some resorting. So let me invert back again and move some of these around a bit. Let's increase the dark, perhaps try and organise them a bit better. I think that one needs to go there. I think that one needs to be up there. There we go. Let's move that one down and that one down. Whoops, that's too far. Yeah, so just move them around until you're happy with your distribution. I don't want too much in the way of colour mixing. You can do that, you know, there are situations where you would do that, but in this case I'm not. There we go. So that's what my map looks like now, and if I invert it, that's what it looks like. And that's a bit closer, I think, to what I want, but it's not absolutely perfect. I want a kind of pale grey, stony, but what I do want to do is add some variation to it. So between these outputs, I'm going to put in, say, some, you know, some speckly noise. So let's select on that noodle, select a blend, and then into this blend put a noise. And what should we pick? Let's pick clouds. Clouds 3, because it's got quite a lot of dark to light. Let's merge those together. And now for this one we could try and add dodge, and that's giving me some quite nice kind of speckliness in there. So let's have a look at our gradient map, and now I'm getting a little bit more in the way of, you know, interesting kind of detail. We could adjust the blend to, say, bring that down a little bit. Just having a look in there, or we could adjust the clouds to increase the scale, and that will give us even more noise, or more variant noise. See, previously this was all going grey down here. If I reset this cloud, this scale back, and then double click on this blend, and then single click on the clouds, we can watch it as it works. So, you know, I've got very linear kind of colour going on there, but if I increase this scale, the more and more noise is going to be introduced. And don't be concerned about the brick, because we're going to deal with that. So back to our colour gradient. I can see that I'm getting a bit too much in the way of dark values now, so I think these dark values need lightening up a bit. I don't need them quite as much as I thought I might. So if I go to the gradient editor and select that dark colour there, oops, I've just accidentally created a key. Let me delete. There we go. We can lighten that up a bit. Maybe take some of the saturation out. And similarly on this one, take some of the saturation out and lighten it up a bit. That seems to be doing more than I expected it to, but there we go. I think that's about right. Okay, so now we need to merge these two together. So I'm going to press space and we'll use a blend. And then I'll copy that one in, and we need a mask. So way back when, we had a nice little mask down here, which we could use. So this one is black and white, and this one is black and white. Which use is largely down to you. I'm going to try the blurred mask first. So I'll, whoops, I was trying to drag the noodle out, but I missed. We'll drag that over and go and have a look. See, now that's quite nicely blended between the two materials, and the blur isn't, you know, blurring out so much or changing the shape too much. Okay, so we'll pop that into our colour node. Now we have some nice kind of dark mortar in between our bricks, and again, as in earlier, if I take the height depth down on the AO, you'll see it lightens up considerably. So it's a choice for you, you know, whether to use AO or not. Let me increase that a bit and then take the radius down so it doesn't spread so much. That's a little bit better, perhaps even less than that. There we go. So now I've got some dark patches, some light patches, depending upon the ambient occlusion map. Okay, so yeah, I'm quite happy with that really, and that is essentially my basic setup. So these nodes then are all driving our colour, so I'm going to drag those up there and right click and add a frame, and then we'll call it colour. Next we're going to come in and have a look at the roughness map to try and get this looking not quite so uniformly shiny. So I will talk to you then. As you can tell, this doesn't look very kind of rock-like at the moment, and that's a lot down to my roughness map. So the roughness is set to this sort of above mid grey, and we need it to be a little darker than that, well, lighter actually. So if I plug this one into there and double click, there we go, and make sure that that is attached to that. Tower stone, roughness, where's roughness? It is there. There we go. So I didn't even have my roughness on. So that really dulls it down, and I don't want it to be completely dull. I want there to be some variation. But first of all, currently if I use this black and white mask, or this black and white blend here, I'm not going to be able to control my depths, because my depths are black, which is always going to be super shiny, and I don't want them to be. So let's adjust that. So if I click on that noodle and type in curve, I can set that base level however I want. So currently it's black, and black is super shiny. I want this to be actually quite white. So I'm going to double click on the middle to add a point, and then I'm going to drag this up until it's white. So the mortar should be non-shiny. You know, that's the main bit of this that I do not want to be shiny. What I do want to have some sort of shine on is the tops of the bricks. So for that I need to bring things down a bit. So if I click on my white up here, I can transpose this down to somewhere around the middle, perhaps a little bit further up than that. There we go. And then I can double click here and I can variegate it across the other levels of grey. So I can make some of them darker, some of them lighter, to get variation. and now I have variation, which is terrific. But I kind of feel that I want it the other way around, so I'm going to take that one up and that one down, and maybe this one down also. Let's see if that's doing anything. It's not doing a thing, so I could go left to right. So you don't have to just go up and down, you can go left to right as well. Now what I've got here then is these kind of interspersing greys, and I want to find that colour and make it white. So I think that colour will be somewhere around there. So if I take that up, no, that's there. So let's try here. That's some of it, I think. I think perhaps it's this one. It is that one. There we go. So let's take that up until we get there. So now my mortar is non-shiny and my rocks are partially shiny, and I'm pretty happy with that. So as a base for a material to go off and paint on, I'm quite happy. I might want to put some variation in the height of the bricks, but I'm not too fussed about that just now. But what I do want to do is take what I've done and copy it so that I can use it again, and I want to use it on the concrete. So in the next one, what I'm going to do is publish this, or save it rather, to get a clean copy, and then we're going to create a new graph and transfer between the two. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's create a new area. So I'm just going to save my package first. So I'm going to click save there. I've saved it already once, so you know you will be unsaved package. You have to give it a name, etc. But then I want to add like a sister graph to this one. So if I right click and go add a new graph or new substance graph, I would still want metallic paint, but I'll call this one stone, because this will be just the plain stone on the tower, and that's what I've called the zone. And there we have a new graph which we can work in. Now what I want from the other one to keep them going is this node here. So I'm going to copy it, copy selection, and then with any luck when I go over to my other graph I can paste this back in. So now I have my stone colour to work with, and what we could do is now build up a new texture which is going to do the pillars and the cross beams on this particular piece. So we'll do that in the next one, and I'll talk to you then. Okay, so the first thing we want is a little height variation across the whole. So I'm going to press space and we'll get a noise up, and I think I'll use the cells 4 again because I like it. And let's plug that into the gradient map and see what that looks like, and that's what it looks like. Excellent, but that's not what we'll use this for. We'll use this for our height. So let's delete that out. So for that I need to mess with this a little bit first. So first I'm going to put a blur in. Let's use a high quality blur, so type in high, not high pass, blur HQ grayscale, there we go. And then we'll take the intensity down and we'll take the quality up, which is something I think I forgot to do in the other one. So let me go back there and have a look at my original blur. Edge detect, blur. Yes, I didn't put my quality up. I think that will probably improve it somewhat. Yes. Okay. So back to our stone graph. Now this time I'm not interested in shapes because I have no mortar. All I'm interested in is the range in which this is going to work as a height map. So I don't want too many highs and I don't want too many lows. I want a nice little middle band which is either not going to displace or will displace. A little bit positive, negative. So after this blur, let's blur that up a bit more. We'll put in a curves node and then plug that in. And on this curves node, I want my absolute base value. Let me double click on that and move that to the middle somewhere. So this value I want to be up somewhere around 0.5, because 0.5 in our sort of parlance terminology won't displace. That's our 0 point. And then for that, then I can go down a little bit, I can go up a little bit and down, just to get a variance. So let me take that one down somewhere about there and then just give it a little bit of something. And now we have a height map that looks something like this, which is a little bit more subtle. I like subtle. So let's plug that into the height channel. And then drag with the right mouse button and drop. And this wants to be the stone texture and the height channel. And as you can see, that's displacing quite a lot. So we might need to adjust that. So on the materials, go to stone and edit, and then we'll bring that down a bit to a small value, an even smaller value than that. There we go. So this appears to be splitting seams, but it's not, because there is no seam there. I know that for absolutely sure. So don't worry about those gaps too much. So this has given us a kind of very wide distortion. So if I increase my scale down here, that should really bring that down. There we go. And if I take that out, press space and type ambient, take my ambient occlusion node and plug those in. Whoops, come on. Should get closer, shouldn't I? There we go. If I increase my height on this, we'll perhaps get a stronger reaction. There we go. And now I can plug my curves into the colour and my colour into the colour. Of course, I need to drag and drop my ambient occlusion on here into stone and AO, and I need to drag my colour down here to stone and base colour. And now we can really see what's going on. So it still seems all a bit too high to me, so let me come back here and see where it starts to go wrong. So it starts sort of being quite defined there and losing its thing, so I might even have to take up the scale even higher to get a bit more detail out of it. There we go. So that gives us like a very broad kind of distortion. We can add some additional features to that, of course, which we will do in the next one. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, before I go any further, I think this would actually be suitable for my roughness map, so I'm going to pop that in over there and then delete that base colour, and then just drag and drop that onto my model, pick stone and roughness. There we go, that's more like it. Okay, so we're going to mess with the colours a little bit later, but for now we're going to add some extra detail into this. So let's pull this back a little. Let's pop that up there, and then we'll press space and add a blend, and pop that in the middle, and then below that we're going to put a noise. Oops. And clouds 3 again. We'll put that in the top, and now we can bring these together. So let's try a few different options. We could try subtract, and that will get us a very dark kind of thing, but it's actually dark and, you know, quite large features. So I'm going to take the scale right down here and have some much smaller features. We're going to use an edge detect or a shape in a moment, but let's try to see what some other options would be. So again, we've got some very positive and very negative values, and the only thing I'm really unhappy about is the scale, so we might even have to take this up even further. Right, that's not the scale, John. Oh dear, that's the scale. So let's try 16. We can overdo these, you know, the scale, you know, the max, min and max are limits, but they're largely arbitrary. You can override them. Okay, so let's look at that. So that's way over the top, so let's try and multiply. Again, it's way over the top. I'm completely losing the underneath, so I'm going to do something about that here. So if I press space and we'll put a curves in, I'm going to limit our range. So if I double click somewhere around the middle, and I'm going to grab the black on the bottom and bring it over. Now you can see it's breaking up and giving me some more splotchy values, and similarly up here I'm going to do the same. I can take this up, or I can take it down to get slightly different effects, and I think down is where I want. And before I blend this in up here, I think I might actually use it as a mask. So let's pop that in as a mask and see what we get. So now we've got our kind of variation, a general variation underneath this one, with some additional more stark kind of changes over the top of it. And we can now, if I pop that into my height and my roughness and my color blend, we'll see what we get. So I'm zooming in, and I can see some variation, but it's not really showing up. You can see it in the roughness, but you're not really seeing it in the color, and that's because we just need to adjust our color gradient to, you know, it's the input. It's a different input to previously, so it's not necessarily going to work the same as before. So now we'll adjust it to make it work. So I will talk to you in the next video on that. Okay, so I've just double clicked on my gradient here, and we'll go to the gradient editor, and then we'll keep an eye on our previews down here to see what happens. So first of all, I could try and invert, and we'll see what happens. Whoops, not invert. I didn't mean invert, sorry, I meant invert positions, not invert colours. And that doesn't have an awful lot of difference, and that tells me that most of the action here is going on in the middle. So what I'm going to do is going to grab these and bring them over, and now I can see some darkness coming in. There we go. Now that much, you know, is much more matching of the the actual bricks. It might be a little bit too dark, so let's grab a couple of those and bring them, whoops, this way a bit until I get a more matching colour. There we go, that's a bit more matching. Now again, I don't think I have to be 100% with this, because when I take it in Substance Painter, I'm going to, you know, do some more adjusting. You'll notice now that it's not really changing anymore, so that's no longer the limiting factor. So let me move this way, and this one this way, and now I've got more purpley colour in the middle, which I don't want, so let's pop that back down again. There we go. And once again, if it doesn't look right, you know, you can always, you know, try again, essentially, because, you know, it's rare you get it right first time. Now one output I haven't done on here is the normal, so let me double click in there to see what that looks like, and then drag and drop that into our stone texture and pick up the normal, and now that's looking far more interesting. There we go. Let's have a look at our ambient occlusion. It's come out, that's not looking very exciting at all. Going to take the radius down, I think the radius is blowing out some of the smaller details. Hardly seems right at all, that ambient map, but hey, it must be. Right, okay, so now I've got a couple of base materials which more or less match each other. I think most of the thing that isn't matching is the mortar, because I have none of the mortar on the concrete, which, or on the stone, which I would expect. I'd expect it not to have it, but I think we're pretty much ready there. So I'm happy with those, and I'm going to export them out to Substance Painter in the next piece. Okay, so let's have a look at this then. So I'm going to save it again just to be absolutely sure. Not there. Right click and save. Now I'm just having a look down my channels here, and this metallic one is never going to be used. So let's take that out, and that's the tower stone, and that's the stone one, so let's get rid of that as well. And I have a feeling that my normal might be a bit strong, judging by, you know, just looking at it essentially. So we can take the intensity of that down somewhat to soften it up a bit. I don't want it to be so obvious that it looks terrible. There we go, somewhat like that. And let's have a look on the other graph, and double click on that one, and perhaps we'll bring this one down as well. So just take the intensity down until you're happy with it. If you actually, yeah, what am I talking about? Actually, we could just use this. So if I click there and expose as new graph input, I could type in normal strength. Whoops, without the G on the end, and with an E. Excellent. And I'm going to copy that to the label as well and say OK, and now we'll be able to control it in the other in Substance Painter. So let's expose this one. This one can't be normal strength, this one will have to be stone normal strength, because if they're the same name it's just going to get confusing. So let's click OK on there. Right, okay, so save again. Sorry, I hadn't really intended to mess about with it much more, but it just realised. Excuse me. So right click and we've saved it, and now we'll publish the SBSAR. I've done this once to test, of course, but you can generate the missing icon and then hit publish. It's going to tell me it already exists because I've already done it, so let's overwrite it. Okay, so then back in Substance Painter, let me delete that. There we go. It's breaking the magic. So I've got my Tower Stone SBSAR where I published it, and I can just right click, drag and drop that in there. Can import it to your assets, to base material, and import. There we go. I'm showing two because I've done it twice. Sorry. Okay, so we can use them now. So let's put our stone on first. So if you've got any paint layers in there, delete them out. And then I think it's going to be this one, so I'll drag and drop that one down there. And there we go, that's it. And we can check whether that's the right one. If I come down to the properties and have a look at my material properties, yes, I have a normal strength. So I can really jack it up, or I can really bring it down. There we go. So now, you know, it's adjustable, which is handy. So the other one then was this one, this Tower Stone. So let's pop that over here, and I'll drop that on there. Now I've had this before where it kind of overwrites previous layers, but I found if you then delete it out and go back up to here and then pop it back in again, that it just works. Don't ask me why. Might be a bug, I'm not entirely sure. And if I zoom in, you'll notice that it's not splitting as it was in the in Substance Designer. It's perfectly fine here. So now I've got a pretty good base to work from, and I can use all my maps and all my various bits and bobs to enhance this and make it look really nice. But I think it's a good place to start from. Let's go and have a look at the rendered view. Come on, rendered view. Don't fail me now. There we go. Oh, it's even sitting on the ground. Look. How perfect. So yeah, there we go. Not too bad at all. So yes, I hope you enjoyed that. In the next sort of set of this, I'm going to actually do the painting for this. But you know, I wanted to show you, you know, how to create a material asset to, you know, give you a good start. So I will talk to you in another set. As usual, any questions, just pop them in the comments. So I'll talk to you soon.